Everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody here today for our September 5th regular council meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I see that all members of council are here. We acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, and of the Huron-Wyandot peoples. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and of all the original peoples of Turtle Island who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. Please stand for our national anthem. We will go to Shelley Brown, our Deputy Clerk, for our closed meeting report on September 5th.
Mayor, and through you, I can report that council met in closed session tonight, September 5th at 5:30 p.m. to discuss labor relations or employee negotiations as permitted by Section 239 2D of the Municipal Act. At this meeting, council directed administration to reallocate staff resources to other areas throughout the municipality. And that is the end of my report.
Declarations of conflicts of interest from members of council this evening. Seeing none, looking for a mover of the published agenda with an amendment to consider item agenda 19.2.2 and bylaw 2264 prior to the reports from administration to be moved up. So looking for Councillor McGuire Blaze, Deputy Mayor Shepley. Any questions? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Needing a mover of the adoption of the minutes from our regular council meeting on August 14th. Looking for a mover. Councillor Guerin, Councillor Hammond, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, and that is carried unanimously. Looking for a mover and a seconder for our special council meeting minutes on August 14th to receive the 2022 Town of Essex financial statements. Councillor Verbeek, Deputy Mayor Shepley, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, and that is carried. And now we will go to public presentations. So this is the fun part. Town of Essex, many of us went to the AMO conference a couple weeks ago, and we're going to start and go around, and each council member will have 2 to 3 minutes to share their experience at the conference. We'll start with Councillor Mady, and we'll just go around this way, and then I'll wrap up.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. From August 21st to 23rd, the municipal leaders, government officials, and public servants, exhibitors, and media gathered in London, Ontario to take part in the AMO conference. The event included the Ministers Forum. That's where all the ministers get on stage and take questions from the attendees, and direct dialogue with over 26 cabinet ministers and many of the issues municipalities are confronting. We were able to take part on some information bus tours with the important incentives that the City of London has undertaken, and we could see if we could bring some of those back here to Essex. I was a little disappointed that some of our delegation requests were not granted, especially seeing that even on the agenda tonight, the tax sale proceeds from the retention of the surplus tax sale proceeds is still being supported by almost every municipality in Ontario. And with MCAP delaying another year, it would have been a good time to be able to address the short-term rental taxation. But we were, however, granted 2 delegations that our team came together and we worked on, and we were able to give terrific presentations to. I was lucky enough to be part of the presentation to the Parliamentary Assistant, Minister of Agriculture, MPP Trevor Jones. The MPP Trevor Jones is of Chatham, Kent, Leamington, and what we were bringing to Mr. Jones was the ability for people, regular residents that are assessed to a municipal drain, that when they are charged with a bill, that they could claim that on their taxes. Councillor Verbeek made this notice of motion and she spearheaded this, so I'll let her tell you all the fine details of that. During a breakfast session for the Canadian Community Building Fund, or the old gas tax, this is a federal source of funding. It's provided from the federal government to provincial, they pass down to municipalities. We can use this funding for lots of different reasons. There's 19 different options that we can use them for. Almost every municipality uses them for roads or bridges. But during the presentation, I was thinking that there might be some interesting spots that we could use them in our wastewater infrastructure, the public transit, and disaster mitigation after what's been happening for the last few weeks here. When I was sitting at that, I was at the table with Trevor, an underwriter for the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. I was able to have a conversation with him about creating a path for auxiliary dwelling units and how they could be written into a mortgage, a loan that could possibly help somebody build the dwelling unit and pay it off under the same classification of a mortgage. Could be a way to get more people building these and helping with intensifying the population a little. I also had a great off-chance meeting with the Mayor Brian Rupp of North Middlesex. His environmental assessment for their wastewater plant might be the exact environmental assessment that we got for our wastewater plant. Although he's been bringing the issue to province for 5 years. When I was talking with him, his latest plan of attack is to actually go to Queen's Park and request an hour-long delegation for trying to receive some of the money to build this wastewater treatment plant. I left him our card and I said, if we could help you, please let us know. And Essex is in the same boat, and I'm sure there's more municipalities. Maybe we can make a joint front on this and get the province looking at giving us money for helping us develop more homes. The information bus tour I took was for 100 Kellogg Lane. This is an old industrial building that unfortunately Kellogg's had left. And I was hoping that was a private public partnership. It turns out this building was just a private endeavor where they used this amazing space and came up with quite a neat concept. There was a few of us that took this tour, and while we were there, we split up, and I believe each one of us was able to take a look at it with our own eyes. My takeaway on it was it's a good way for us to preserve some of our historic buildings, repurpose them, and come up with activities and spaces that our residents could come and use. And as we're developing future sports field or recreation areas, maybe we will be looking at much more of a private public partnership to get some of these up and running quickly. So as always, it was a great networking and information gathering event, and I'm really excited to hear my other councilors' viewpoints. Thank you.
Councillor Allard.
I want to speak on the trade show. There was many booths there that showed interest in fire, health, safety. And I want to speak on one benefit I think we can bring to Essex is a new toilet called NIU toilet. It's a portable washroom and it's self-cleaning and monitored through an app. Jason and I spoke to, Councillor Mady and I, spoke to Jeff Cohen, who was a sales representative. He said that they're very cost effective. They clean themselves. The outside is made of diamond steel, so it's not something that kids can trash. And it's all monitored and very portable. We use it for festivals and other utilities that we need. Thank you.
Okay, through you, Madam Chair. So, all in all, it was a good conference. I had an opportunity to learn a lot and, build relationship with my fellow counselors as well, which is also key. But as Councillor Mady mentioned, one of the only 2 delegations that we were accepted for, we attended together. And so we were able to see Parliamentary Assistant Trevor Jones, who is the MPP in our neighboring municipality in Chatham, Kent. And we just asked him to investigate the possibility of allowing non-farming residents in our rural area to be able to some of their big drain bills. When there's a big drainage project done, everybody on that road gets and if you you can't. So we just asked him to just look into this and investigate to see if it's something that could be done. He definitely agreed to do that. He suggested to us that we come back and encourage our residents to bring forward case studies. So if you are one of these residents that do not farm your land and have been dinged with a big drainage bill from a recent project, if you can forward this to councilmembers.ca, we can forward it to him. So also some of the highlights that stood out to me were when former Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Catherine McKenna, spoke. She was really a good speaker. She was our keynote, and she helped us to see that how critical it is for us to start taking action now. Small and large gestures are all very important. She pointed out that the events we're experiencing in Canada and globally, the extreme heat, the floodings, the storms, the air quality, and the fires, they're not all started by climate change, but they are each fueled by it. So that was one of she spoke a lot, but that was one of the things that jumped out at me. She encouraged us to stay hopeful though, and just to keep seeking ways to make a difference. She also reminded us that young people are counting on us to get this right for the next generation. Next speaker that really, there was a lot of speakers. I can tell you that we also had learning lunches and insight breakfasts, and there were speakers at all of those. And of good opportunities, but this was the second speaker that really jumped out to me was our Ontario Regional Chief, Glenn Hare, and he spoke strongly and passionately on behalf of all of the chiefs in Ontario in strong opposition to the selling off of the Greenbelt lands. And so that I got goosebumps when I think about, like, it was moving to hear his passion to advocate for the people. Lastly, I'll touch on, and is that the study tour that I took, we were given the opportunity to all go on different study tours, and we chose what interested us. And I went on one for Try Recycle. And this place is over 30 years old, and they take construction waste from all of the City of London, but dozens of small to mid-sized municipalities across the province. They take the construction waste from going to the landfill. So it's diverting all these metals and all these woods and hydro poles and making it into an excellent end use product. So they recycle kitty litter into crop cover and drywall, and they use the asphalt shingles from roofs to make a road paving asphalt product. Just countless products they make out of the wood that's diverted from the landfill. So I didn't write the numbers down. I do have them in my paperwork, but it's like millions of tons that they have diverted in the last 30 years from going to various landfills because municipalities across the province that host a landfill like we do in Essex are doing everything we can to save our airspace, to prolong the life of the landfill. So you'll probably be hearing me talk about this one a little bit more once, little later on, but it was great. It was really informative. Also, we traveled together, 4 of us. And that for me was a real opportunity to get to know. So prior to this term of council, a lot of us didn't know each other. I had never met Councillor Hammond or Deputy Mayor Shepley. None of us really knew each other. So traveling together didn't just save the taxpayers a few dollars, but it helped us develop some relationships by getting to know each other. Anyway, that's it.
Deputy Mayor Shepley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. At AMO, we heard Premier Ford announce the expansion of the strong mayor's powers to municipalities projected to exceed 50,000 in population by 2031. That will be up to 50 in the province at this point. Additionally, the announcement of the Building Funds Faster was introduced to provide funding for municipalities meeting at least 80% of their annual housing creation targets set by the provincial government. This 3-year, $1.2 billion fund will allocate up to $400 million annually to municipalities achieving these housing goals. Progress will be assessed by comparing housing starts and residential units created against assigned targets. Those exceeding 80% will receive funding, while others will not. Furthermore, 10% of the fund will be reserved for small, rural, and northern communities that have not yet received housing targets from the province. We will be seeking guidance from our local MPPs to determine our position in this initiative. Additionally, we met with the Health Minister, Sylvia Jones, led by our mayor. I'll defer to the mayor or one of the other councillors that was there to elaborate on that, but I wanted to express my admiration for the mayor's ability to present substantial amount of information within our allotted time. I'm not sure an auctioneer could have gotten as much information across to the health minister as the mayor did. Mayor Bondi and CAO Suite and myself met with Hydro One. During our meeting with Hydro One, we discussed the possibility of adding additional feed lines to Bell River and Kingsville to mitigate power outages, allowing for switches to be installed, possibly. We also explored Hydro One's readiness for future developments in the area of whether their crews were approaching our region with an investment strategy plan. We requested that Hydro One attend a future council meeting with us to provide us a high-level investment plan. Furthermore, we proposed a meeting with Hydro One and Elk to identify any commonalities and areas for improvement, an open-minded approach that was not an option historically. And beyond that, it really was a great teamwork and relationship building. I really enjoyed it. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Councillor Hammond?
There. As you've heard, we were just inundated with information overload. There wasn't a time in the conference where they weren't pumping some information into you. And a lot of it was directed at the current housing crisis and building more homes and everything that's associated with it, as far as inclusiveness, accessibility, infrastructure problems, and so forth, and all the way down the line. The takeaway from it in the last couple of weeks has illustrated that the province's desire to pump out these homes is obviously and their streamlining process is leaving a lot of areas untouched and unexplored, and they're causing some problems. So my takeaway is that the municipalities have a big responsibility in monitoring this housing growth that we're going to experience and making sure that we have everything in place to make our homes livable. The current weather conditions have shown that we need to take steps to accommodate a lot of these homes and stuff like that, and to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place necessary. One other thing I'd like to note that, having lived in London about 30 years ago, while I was there this time, I noticed that their homelessness has become much more prevalent in London. And it's something that we need to start addressing here locally. Windsor, Essex, I know a lot of our local homeless end up in Windsor. And now Windsor's starting to send them back out. It is something that needs to be addressed, and with this housing crisis, it's only going to get worse. But other than that, the wealth of knowledge that they pumped into us, it's quite overwhelming, actually. And I look forward to the next one, and I hope that we're able to progress with this housing crisis and as streamline an attempt that the province is trying to make it. Thank you very much.
So Garen?
Thank you, through the mayor. Yeah, I mean, that was a great experience. It was my first time going to AMO. I missed out last time. So yeah, it was a great experience. I'm not going to touch on a lot of stuff that my council colleagues are already talking about. I'm going to talk about some more, maybe some more low hanging fruit, but I did enjoy the trade show. There was many vendors there. I guess my biggest takeaway from the whole conference was that, you know, meeting all the other municipalities, a lot of other municipalities our size, we're actually not in this alone. I mean, a lot of the problems and struggles that small municipalities like us are dealing with, everyone is dealing with across, whether it's severe weather, infrastructure. I mean, so it was actually nice to talk to some of the other municipalities and their counselors and get a take on how they're dealing with things on their end. But I will talk about a couple of things from the trade show. I sat down for quite some time myself and Deputy Mayor Shepley actually with Intact Insurance, just discussing municipalities insurance versus doing it regionally or doing it through a pool. It was actually interesting to get the insurer's perspective on whether or not that's something they see coming. There are some regions I understand that are experienced with it and are doing it. And so I guess the end result from that meeting was basically, in a nutshell, they don't really know if regional will benefit more so than doing it the way we're doing now, just on a municipal by municipal. But that was interesting, and I expect to see more things coming down the pipe on that. The other one was with respect to fire. There's a privately owned company out there. I think it's called Firemark Inc. They've been around for about 13 to 15 years, and they help recover from insurers eligible costs our fire departments incur while attending property calls. So they're basically like a collection agency for municipalities. How it works is municipalities sign up with them to collect fire department coverages from the insurance company's policies. After an individual has a fire, the fire department will send off information to Firemark about the situation, what it costs the fire department. That company will then contact the person with the fire, ask who their insurance company is, and they basically bill the insurance company for the fire department charges up to the limit that is allowed under the homeowner's insurance policy. The program, I understand, is already being looked at by our administration, so that's great. But I think that's another one that we can start seeing some benefits from. So great time, and I'm looking forward to next year's.
I myself, I felt pulled in many different directions and I didn't even get through the whole trade show, but it is what it is. I met with the mayor of Chatham-Kent to further talk about EMS and hydro stability. Councilor Verbeek touched on it, but many of us carpooled. Some of us also room shared, and we brought home our recycling to make sure that we were recycling it, because sometimes when you're at hotels, you can't guarantee that it's recycled there. One of the takeaways for me was that we need to always consult with our First Nations. That was really impactful, the speech from the chief on how we need to build it into our policies, and also human rights. There was a great workshop on human rights and how we need to look at our programs and services and make sure that we're always keeping human rights in mind. I had a one-on-one meeting with a representative from the Nature Conservancy of Canada to talk about Phragmites. So maybe I can bring something back to our regional councils and IRCA to see how we can make some headway with Phragmites. One of my favorite evenings was when we walked together as a group, the London streetscape. So we got to see how the streetscape in London actually looks, and it gives me a lot of hope where there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And this is my first AMO since 2014, so it's been a long time. Municipalities receive 9 cents on every dollar. That was one of the comments that came up in the ministers forum, where the ministers forum is where the provincial cabinet has all their ministers and delegates get to pose the ministers questions, and there was not a lot of answers, but it's interesting to hear the questions anyways. We did have a meeting with Sylvia Jones, and we are making some headway in terms of code reds, code blacks in Windsor, Essex, meaning that when people call for ambulances, there's less code reds and code blacks, which means there's hardly any ambulances or no ambulances. So we are making some headway. I think we were really clear with the minister that we still want to see progress, you know, and I still didn't get an answer on how many hospital beds we have per capita. It seems, if anybody's listening or can help me find out how we can find out hospital beds per capita in Ontario provinces, that's something I'd like to see, because I believe our region is growing and our population is becoming more diverse with seniors and opiates, and I don't believe our hospital beds are growing to the same degree as our needs. So it was a great conference, and I look forward to going again, and hopefully Councillor McGuire-Blaise can come with us, because she was the only one that couldn't attend because she had family down. But it was a good trip for Essex bonding and also regional bonding. And I got you a little flyer on your toilet so we could talk about it maybe at budget when we need one. So with that being said, we need a motion to receive the verbal presentation by the Town of Essex Council regarding the AMO conference. Councillor McGuire-Blaise, supported by Deputy Mayor Shepley. Any questions? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. It's only, sorry, unless yeah, only questions from, any questions from us to us up here? Seeing none, all in favor? You'll have to catch us in the hall later. Yes. Okay. All right, so we're going to, is it under unfinished? Are we bringing it? Okay, so now we're going to 19.2.2. Bylaw 2264, and we will go to Director Chadwick first, and then members of our public who are as delegates.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. So this evening before you, you have a bylaw that essentially is a technical exercise to clear up an issue that was brought forward when the developer for Woodview Estates or Woodview subdivision approached us to finalize the registration of the subdivision. What that entails is a few things, one of which is to ensure the street naming is appropriate. What we found was this particular phase of Woodview had an entrance in we'll call it the existing phase. So the existing phase of Woodview has a right of way, and that right of way into the future subdivision is called Brett Crescent. Right now, it looks like a vacant lot. It is essentially the connection to that future subdivision. So we did some digging. We saw that the subdivision itself, this particular phase of the subdivision at one point in time had renamed the entire, we'll call it the road within that future subdivision, as Ruth Avenue. However, the road, like I said, connecting into is still called Brett Crescent. And so we did some digging. We saw that there was that change back in 2014, I believe, or 2013. And so as it stands, administration must bring forward the amending bylaw tonight to rename, yes, the road within the future subdivision to what was brought up to us at the time, when I said us, administration, as Brett Crescent. So again, that's to connect existing Brett Crescent to that future subdivision. If council decides to pass the bylaw before you, Ruth Avenue, which again, back in 2014 was renamed at one point, will have to be renamed Brett Crescent. The entirety of the road will then have one name. If council decides not to pass the bylaw before you, council will have to decide on what to do to address the fact that there would be two names, Brett Crescent for that little piece going into the subdivision, and then Ruth Avenue for that internal piece. And lastly, if council wants to reconsider naming Brett Crescent, that tiny little piece, this will have to be done at a subsequent meeting such that notice of the name change requirements must be fulfilled. Thank you.
Yeah,
Now we will move to our delegates. Our first delegate tonight is, sorry, I was flipping around. Edward and Charles Hickey. If you, sir, if you could move back to the delegate stand and you have to click on your mic. Okay, okay. Okay, sounds good. So Mr. Flood, can you move back to the delegate stand there? And when you get there, turn on the little mic. You'll be on YouTube. It's your TV debut. Oh, no.
Your worship, just before I start, I'm just a little confused here because when I look at what's on here, it looks like we're supporting Ruth Avenue to be Ruth Avenue here, according to this document here in front of me.
Madam Mayor, so those are recommended actions. They are not, in fact, anything that's set in stone. So that's when we do our agenda, it goes based on what that is on that bylaw or report and their recommendation.
Well, just for clarification, I am from the town of Essex and I live here. My wife and I, Emery, we're in County Road 50, Essex. And I just also like to say it's not all the Hickey family here. We have the Blackburns, we have Mr. Santa, who's the Pioneer Seed rep here for the county, and my sister Paula. So may I begin and just say that I'm here to endorse that the name remains Ruth Avenue. Council endorsed these names of Mr. and Mrs. Hickey and Mr. and Mrs. Burstein in September of 2013. At that time when they were endorsed, please remember that we had a poor economy and nobody else was taking the risk in developing in this town. One thing that really concerns me here is that the Hickeys only learned of this proposed name change from Denisa Blackburn, a concerned citizen. It's disappointing that the town solicitor or the director Chadwick did not reach out to the Hickey family as a courtesy. Mr. Hickey's right here. He has the oldest law firm in Essex. His name's on the sign on 14 Center Street. So saying that, what is so important about leaving Ruth, Charles, Dolores, and Morton as they are? For future generations, the Tully Woods is protected. They agreed to give the town 3 hectares, 7.4 acres of woodland. That was more than double that was required under the parkland allocation as per the bylaw in the town of Essex. I'd like to speak a little bit about the Brett Crescent because I read the solicitor's remarks and no one does know for sure if it was named after the late Reeve and mayor of the town of Essex, Wilbur Brett. If it was, then it should have been named Wilbur Brett. In no way is anybody here tonight in any way to disparage his good name. As a resident of Essex, it's my hope that in the future, some council can find an avenue and a development phase worthy of Wilbur Brett's name. And just to be clear again, I just want to make sure to the Brett family that they know that we support him. When my mother was mayor of the town of Essex and she was conflicted to resign or wait till she dies, the only counselor she consulted with before the council meeting in which she did resign was Mr. Brett and his wife, and I drove her over to his house to meet with him. So he's a good gentleman, and it's something we need to consider as town residents in the future. I'd just like to talk about Ruth for a minute to make sure we're all on the same page here. Ruth was self-made. At one time, she was the top 10 Canada Trust real estate agent in the country. She was also president of the Essex Rotary. She was a volunteer and a board member of the Essex Food Bank. And she was very aggressive. She always sought me for money. She donated to the parks in Essex, particularly Sadler's Pond and Bridlewood Park. And across the street from Bridlewood Park, Ruth and her husband raised 6 productive children, airline pilot, nurse, police officer, and entrepreneurs. I ask that this council please leave Ruth's name alone and leave it as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flood. And I don't want to speak for our administration, but I believe when we set notices, it's according to our policies, procedures. We could always do better with notices, right? But we have a set standard and some new faces here, but thank goodness that Denisa caught this. So questions, feedback from members of council. Councilor McGuire Blaze.
Thank you through the chair. I had, from the first time I got an email from Miss Blackburn, some concern about this. I myself live on Charles. I'm one of 2 houses that live on Charles. Where they posted this is completely vacant. That you even saw it, it baffles my mind because it was put on a stick in the middle of weeds that are 5 feet tall. So when I think that this came about in the wrong way, I received a letter myself letting me know that because I was a resident, the very first line in this says, take notice that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Essex intends to pass a bylaw. Is this standard? How do we intend to do it? This has never been brought to council before. Administration intends to pass the bylaw and you want to bring it to council. But I think the wording of this letter was very misleading. And I think the entire way it was done was very misleading. So definitely there's room for improvement. I myself am for keeping the name Ruth and changing the very beginning, the first, I don't know, 4 feet maybe, that was there before Ruth was built, changing that from Brett to Ruth. And I do believe that in the future developments, we're going to have a few more, hopefully soon. We use Brett in a future development because definitely it's a great name. He was a very good member of our community. He deserves to be recognized. But I don't think that we should remove Ruth from this particular subdivision and these other particular names. Thank you.
Blaze. Questions, comments from members of council? Councillor Allard.
To anybody, I guess. Is there any residents on the street now with, okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We would have to get a motion. Okay, all right. Okay, yes, you go back. You have to go back to the, and now you get to be on TV. Okay, you might need some help.
I was blindsided about 10 days, 2 weeks ago. This is the first that I ever heard about the change being made. I've never been approached. I've never been served any papers. And of course, the first principle, if you want to change something or derogate from somebody's rights, you must give them notice. And this thing has been going on apparently for a long time. I never had one word, phone call, anything about it. I just want to make that clear. It was done completely with the knowledge, out and all my knowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey. Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I'm in agreement. I think that I think it's a great idea to keep the street name the way it was intended and change that first additional feet at a later date. And I'll be supporting that motion and when the motion's presented.
Thank you. It sounds like Councillor McGuire Blaze had a motion in her statement earlier. I'm wondering, can you repeat that so we're all on the same page?
So I want to put a motion forward to keep the name Ruth and change the first beginning of the road from Brett to Ruth.
Then I think you had something else that we used, Brett.
And then
Clarification, through you, Madam Mayor, keep the name Ruth and change the beginning of the road.
from Brett to Ruth. And then in future developments, in the next future development, name a street Brett.
Okay. Director Chadwick?
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. Just as a note for street naming in general, there is a street naming policy or bylaw rather. And I think it would have to be an amendment to the street naming bylaw, which I believe is after veterans. So street naming is according to a list of local veterans.
Yes, that's noted. We've deviated from that bylaw several times since I've been here, so not too worried about that. Looking for a seconder for that motion, Deputy Mayor Shepley. And just, I don't believe there was any ill intent done by our administration. Luckily, this came up, and I think it would have come up on this public, I think Councilor McGuire Blaze would have noticed it too, because she lives right there. So I don't think there's any ill intent. And I just, it's very confusing. I understand. I've been trying to read it. It's very confusing. And I think our administration just saw that Brett was registered on the land registry. So that's why they chose that one. But we're getting down the road we want to. So I want to thank everybody for coming out as well. Any questions, comments to the motion from members of council? Councilor Mady.
Chair. Just so I know, so right now on the area that's called Brett, there's no houses. How much of a road are we talking about that's there? Like how?
Director Chadwick?
I believe it's, thank you, Mayor Bondi, a width of 66 feet, but I will pass to Director Gerard, who may be able to answer, but it's just a small piece.
I think we understand that it's just a small piece. Any further questions, comments from members of council? Youth, Councilmember Pine.
I just want to say that I think that it would be imperative that we do keep Ruth. Looking at what I found out about this from a Facebook post that was on the town of Essex, which I since couldn't find to look at again. But I think it's clear council has already decided on this in 2013 to change it. Is a bit blindsiding, especially considering that we're keeping 3 that were named coincidingly. And it was a group that was named at the same time. So it should definitely stay Ruth, and we can look at a later date for Brett.
Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, and now I just need a motion to receive the delegates. Councilor Verbeek, Councilor Allard, any questions? All in favor? Thank you. You can stay if you want, or okay. Sorry, we have a meeting. We have to keep going. Reports from administration. We'll move on to Community Services 2023-26 Santa's Village Committee. Recommended action that Community Services report be received and that the terms of reference for the Santa's Village Committee attached be approved, and that council give post-budget approval for an additional $22,546 in both revenues and expenses for Santa's Village event on December 9th, 2023, showing a net zero financial impact to the municipality. Moved by Councillor Guerin, supported by Councillor Verbeek. Any questions to this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried.
You, Chair. As a member of the striking committee, I'm wondering if we could streamline appointing the council member to this committee. I would like to make a motion that Counselor McGuire Blaze be appointed to the committee for Santa's Village.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Shepley. Counselor McGuire Blaze, will you stand on the committee?
Through the chair, yes, thank you very much for the nomination.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of that motion? Unless anybody wants to speak to it, thank you. And I'm sure we will start with advertising for members of the public. So watch for our social media and newspaper, however else we do it, if you want to be involved in the Santa's Village this year. Community Services, transfer of lease for viewing devices at Colchester Park. Recommended actions that the Community Services 2023-25 be received and that council approve transferring the existing lease with Ontario Limited Vintage Grapes to another numbered company for lease space at 325 Jackson Street in Colchester for a 2-year term starting September 1st. Be read a first, second, and third time. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Counselor McGuire Blaze, supported by Counselor Allard. Any questions? Counselor Hammond.
This again is seems to be another after the fact process here. Is there any type of background as to the last 2 years of the lease and why it's getting moved to another company? And I'm also concerned as to if it's currently insured under the previous contract, if it's currently insured and whether that's going to be reviewed.
Leave the vintage grapes with Brian McGinty past ownership, and he's passing these as well, but I'll leave our Director Morissette if he wants to add anything.
Through you, Mayor Bondi. So there was a transfer of assets from the previous owner of Vintage Grapes to a new owner of Vintage Grapes. There was a sale of all the assets, which included the lease agreement from the viewing devices. We have ensured that the new ownership is properly insured as well. So both past and current are insured on those devices.
And Counselor Hammond, any further questions from members of council? And we'll also be passing bylaw 2267. Seeing no further questions, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Drainage 2023-07, appointment of an engineer under section 78 of the Drainage Act for the Austin C. Right Drain. Recommended action that drainage report 2023-07 be received and that council appoint Rude Engineering under section 78 of the Drainage Act to review the Austin Right Drain. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Counselor Hammond, supported by Counselor Mady. Any questions from members of council? Seeing none, all in favor. And that is carried unanimously as well. Reports from our youth council members. Will start with Youth Council Member Pine and then Youth Council Member Smith.
Mayor Bondi. So today was a great day for a lot of youth in our municipality. It was the first day back to school. So wishing everyone a great rest of the year. Hope that they learn a lot. And I'm sure a bunch of parents in our municipality are pretty happy too. I think there was a lot of parties going on today. Thank you.
Continue what Colin said. I'm wishing everyone had a lovely first day of school.
I think most parents are happy, except for when it comes to making lunches. I hate making lunches. County Council update, looking for a mover and a seconder that the County Council regular council meetings be held or held on July 19th be adopted, and then our Deputy Mayor can speak to them. Councilor Verbeek and Deputy Mayor Shepley. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. At the last council of the 16th of August, we took the significant step of declaring intimate partner violence an epidemic in our region. This declaration is crucial in the initial step in addressing the issue of aligning with recommendations from a report following the coroner's inquest into tragic incidents in Renfrew County. The County of Essex has authorized a memorandum of understanding with the town of Essex to access federal funding for adding paved shoulders to the County Road 50. The grant will cover the town's 60% share of the project, which is part of the expansion of the county's wide active transportation system. This project includes road rehabilitation and is estimated to cost $5 million in total, with the county contributing 40% for the paved shoulder portion, which is projected to cost 3.8 million. Construction will commence this year and extend over the next 2 years. Another important development in the proposed construction of stormwater management pond on the Essex County Civic Center property. This project is located southeast of the Civic Center and is a vital step to improving stormwater drainage for the town of Essex. Lastly, we passed a bylaw enabling the County of Essex to take over waste collection delivery from local municipalities. It's important to note here that this is pending resolutions of support from at least 4 of the 7 local municipalities. Details on waste collection costs will be allocated among municipalities and are still under consideration. We will be considering this resolution at our next council meeting on the 18th of September. I feel it's important at this time, and I'll restate it again at the next, when we discuss this, that the organics piece being discussed and has already been determined by the last county council, and we are included in the regional organics collection. And that's not going to change. So some of the misreporting out there that I've been reading in social media, it's not something we're going to be deciding at this time. It's already been decided. Thank you.
Any questions to the deputy mayor or on the minutes? Councillor McGuire Blaze.
Thank you through the chair. I just have a question about the organics portion, and maybe you may not have an answer for me. Is the county providing bins for the organics waste portion? How do we go about that? Is there a program in place, or is that still to be determined?
Madam Mayor, I believe that is still to be determined.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Yeah, just because the can of worms is open. My concern, I haven't seen it. I've been trying to get a good look at the bylaw. Is there any way that we can get a copy of that bylaw that was written? And then for a lot of the residents in my ward that are rural and that right now aren't part of the garbage levy, is this gonna force them into the levy? Should I be asking people for their opinion on that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe at this time that's something to be that hasn't been determined completely yet. We will go over that more over on the 18th when that comes about to town.
Mayor Bondi. So as Deputy Mayor Shepley mentioned, at the next council meeting, September 18th, Director Drusevich has a full report on the garbage pros, cons, how it affects our current residents, current level of service. So a lot of those questions will be answered on how it affects our municipality.
All in favor of receiving? Oh, sorry, Director Drusevich.
On that note, if council does have direct questions they'd like answered and addressed in that report, feel free to email myself and I'll make sure that I've written what you've said at this meeting, but anything else that you can think of, please send my way and I'll address it in the report.
Through you, Madam Mayor, on a final note, I mean, I think it's important that our residents, if they have questions, I suggest you send them to your ward reps and we can then forward them on. So this is a pretty big decision that's weighing on Essex. And I think that it's important that everybody has a chance to weigh in, and now's your time. We've got a couple weeks before we come back. Send those questions to your ward reps and we'll do our best to try and get those answers for you. Thank you.
And council, I just sent you the bylaw. I had it in my file, so I just sent it to everybody. Check. All right, all in favor? And that is carried. Correspondence to be received. 13.1, that all the correspondence listed in agenda item 13.1 be received. There's a lot there. We can pull them out after we receive them all. I need a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councilor Mady. All in favor? And then any council members want to pull out any correspondence? Councillor Hammond.
Couple things. Back to our landfill. I see we had a report. What number was 1314? Yeah. 1314, the Essex Solid Waste Authority Landfill Liaison Committee meeting minutes. And in there, it has a section regarding I'm looking for the leachate garbage that seems to be a problem and being the leachate process in Windsor, I understand, was halted processing our leachate. And then at the time, it hadn't been resumed. I'm wondering if it has resumed and if what alternative methods we're using to treat our leachate.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Shepley is on the USWA board, so he will attempt to answer this.
Okay, so through you, Madam Mayor, I believe we have resumed some truckloads that are going to the Windsor Waste Management Treatment Center. We've also we've started a temporary facility to test. I forget I'm not sure the actual term for you. Caught me off guard with this, but they're bringing in a system to develop on site to look after it. It will only handle, I think, 1 or 2 truckloads at this point. So it's just a small unit to see if we're able to do it on site, and then we can go from there.
Are we looking into processing our own leachate on site then in the future, or?
Deputy Mayor Shepley?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yeah, that's exactly what the intent was designed for, so that we can hopefully take care of our own and the surrounding area as well.
One other thing, yes, ELK. I noticed we've purchased a bunch of smart grids. I wasn't aware that Essex was having the same problems as Harrow was, same or worse. My question is, after all the years of complaints we've had in Harrow, why are we installing these smart grid switches in Essex as opposed to before Harrow? If there's an answer to that or a reason.
Take that one. So we have not yet done the public reporting of the August ELK minutes, because in the August minutes, you'll see that we ordered the switches for Harrow as well. And there's only a 1 month time delay between the purchase order. So when the board gave direction in June, it took a couple months to ask the supplier how much it would cost and create the purchase order. So when we decided to move ahead in August, the purchase order is already out for the Harrow switches because we knew who to go to and how much to put the tender out for. So we'll see them both in both ends of our town. The reason for going to Ward 1 first, there's a lot more people in Ward 1, right? You tend to go where there's a lot more people. And it's also very clear when the power goes out sometimes in Ward 1, they call it the bad end of town and the good end of town. So what the switch will do is it will move Hydro 1 lines it'll move the hydro from the other switch so that we shouldn't notice the power interruption. So both are coming. It's also a money thing, right? We had to make sure that we have money in the budget for these switches because they weren't budgeted for by the previous administration. Okay, if that's all, anything further, any other correspondence? Councillor Allard.
Is there dust protection on the sex concession? I went down there today and part of the road seemed just like beautiful. There's no dust. The second part of the road, the gravel seemed to be on the shoulders and it seemed to be a washboard, but there wasn't much dust. Just wondering about if we're doing that and what about the eventual tarring and chipping?
Dr. Gerard answer this question. I'm assuming that we're just receiving the petition now, but when the petition was originally done, there might have been a lot more dust since that's probably when they put gravel down. Director Gerard?
Thank you. Through the mayor. That is correct. So, I mean, we did have a significantly dry summer this year, which challenged our operations department in terms of touching up the gravel roads, keeping dust down. We had numerous complaints, especially through June and July. Obviously, we received quite a bit of rain. I would say those 2 months worth of rain in 3 days, but we have noticed that a lot of the dust is, settled down on the roads. This petition, I know, was received at the beginning of August. So it is likely at the time when we would have received a lot of complaints due to the dry weather. Every road that gets touched in the municipality after it's been graded does receive dust suppressant. So this road would have received an application of dust suppressant as it would every year.
Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, just as follow up on that. The second part of that, the eventual tarring and chipping. Is this petition good enough to start a process where we would look at the eventual tarring and chipping of the 6th concession?
Through the chair. So the petition was deemed valid by the clerk's department. So the short answer is yes, that it has been deemed valid, and that's why it's on the agenda tonight. However, there is no formal town of Essex policy for tarring, hard surfacing gravel roads. So the only tool in our toolbox is really to use our legislative tool, which is the local improvement process. So if council did want to look at proceeding with a local improvement process whereby the residents who live on that road pay for their portion of the road improvements, that could be initiated through this petition, and we could reach out to those residents if council decided to give us direction that way.
To you, Madam Mayor. So by reaching out to the residents, that would start the conversation with them on how the process would work and how much it could cost them. But it wouldn't actually come as a bill to them today. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. So we have a presentation that we do for local improvements. So once we receive a petition that residents express interest in proceeding with a local improvement, we'll give that presentation free of charge, of course, as a service from the town of Essex. It'll go through the process, how the actual apportionment of the assessment goes, the timing, the approximate cost. So yes, there'd be no charge to them until a bylaw was passed by council to proceed with works.
So I've been on council for 12 years and I've never heard of, other than a private road, I've never heard of a local improvement charge being done for a tar and chipping of a road. Isn't like we just did Old Malden, I believe, in the last term of council, and we decided it as a council to do it in the budget. And I'm not saying that that's what this council is going to do, but couldn't, in theory, council tar and chip this road in one of our budget years if council wishes to?
Yeah, that's correct. Council can allocate funds towards hard surfacing any road or upgrading any road within the municipality by resolution of council.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments from members of council? I think the CEO and I have talked a few times about this, about having like we've had a lot of training sessions. I know we've had a lot of training sessions, but having a night where we talk about the different types of roads we have in our municipality and why some roads have been gravel and what happens when we take them out of gravel and, cold rolled in place roads and pulverized, and just, I think that that's something to keep on our radar when our schedules lighten up a bit. Councillor Maybe?
To you, Madam Mayor. If we give them the presentation, they have all the information on if they wanted to go ahead today with doing it themselves or waiting until it became a resolution of council. Would that information be conveyed to our residents too?
Yes, that's correct. We would offer the opportunity for them to proceed with it or not proceed with it. It's completely of the decision of the people who live on that road. And it's important to note that not just the people who signed the petition necessarily, but everybody who on that road who assessed the cost. And they would be allowed to proceed. They would be given the choice to proceed or not to proceed. And then if they decide not to proceed, they can continue to lobby council to try and have their road hard surfaced. I think it's what's important to note is we did do an exercise last year to determine what a gravel road costs a municipality compared to a tar and chip road. When we did that exercise, per kilometer of gravel road cost the municipality about $7,500 annually to maintain and keep up that gravel road. So that's per 1 kilometer. Our number for tar and chipping per 1 kilometer is approximately $30,000. So it's in excess of 3 times the cost of a gravel road. And our gravel roads are significantly underutilized in comparison to our tar and chip roads that exist today. So there is a significant cost per capita there. But absolutely, we can proceed with local improvement, or council could proceed with a resolution even through the 2024 budget.
Mayor Bondi. So yes, I have talked with Director Gerard, and we are planning a presentation to council in advance of budget, right? Kind of where roads would be fresh in mind. Secondly, this is on the agenda. So as Director Gerard provided 2 options, either the local improvement or budget. If it's an option of budget, please forward that number or that request to Director Jurusevich. It could be on the council list that we have.
Mayor Shepley?
Mayor, just all this talk of tar and chipping and there's an additional road. We have so many roads that are in dire need to be done that need to be looked at. And this should be like secondary when it comes to budget time. This comes behind a lot of the other roads that we've been trying to get done that need to get done, as far as I'm concerned.
Items in the correspondence or anything further? Councillor Mady, you had your hand? No?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to make the motion that these residents get the presentation for the local improvement. I already see pushback in our budget talks, and I don't know if we'll be able to get this road tarred and chipped in a reasonable amount of time. So giving the residents all the proper information, I think might be very prudent in this.
Just wondering, would that be considered a notice of motion to come forward? Is there a lot of administrative work? Okay, Councillor Mady, if we could discuss that, I'm okay with that, but I think it should be a notice of motion since it's a big ask on the fly.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, yeah, I'll make a notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other correspondence? Seeing none, we do have a motion already on the, oh, we were just pulling them out. We already received them. Okay. Correspondence to be received and supported, Coaches Association of Ontario National Coaches Week. We will go to Ms. Brown, our Deputy Clerk.
Madam Mayor, we'll go through here. Whereas National Coaches Week encourages Canadians to say thanks and celebrate the tremendous positive impact coaches have on athletes and communities. And whereas this week will focus on putting a spotlight on coaches and give this largely volunteer integral part of Canadian sports a thanks. And whereas with events held across the province and country to celebrate coaching, National Coaches Week provides coaches with the recognition they deserve for the time they devote to ensuring Canadians live an active, healthy lifestyle. And whereas communities all across Ontario will be showing their support for coaches through community events, proclamations, and lightings to celebrate and recognize coaches. And whereas the Coaches Association of Ontario is an independent, nonprofit, coach-led organization founded in 2002 that strengthens development opportunities and provides resources, representation, and recognition for coaches in all sports of all levels. And whereas we believe coaches' contributions should be financed and rewarded appropriately, and the Coaches Association of Ontario advocates that sports and the coaching profession continue in a culture of innovation, continual renewal, and professional development.
Proclamation, I'm looking for a mover and a seconder, Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Allard. All in favor? Unless there's any questions, all in favor? Okay, that is carried. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Bondi, on behalf of council, do hereby proclaim September 16th to 24, 2023 as National Coaches Week in the town of Essex. Okay, 13.2.2 Francophone Ontario Day Flag Raising Request. Looking for a mover and a seconder that the flag request for Francophone Ontario Day celebration be received and that we raise a flag at Town Hall on September 25th in support of Francophone Ontario flag raising celebration to be received and supported. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Hammond. Any questions? Councillor McGuire Blaze.
Thank you through the chair. I've just noticed we have a flag raising quite often. Is there a cost associated with flag raising?
Director Morissette.
Through you, Mayor Bondi, there's no direct cost. We do have a little staff time that's involved, but it's minimal. So each request has to provide their own flag to us to be able to put up. So the cost is minimal in terms of staffing resources.
Any further questions? Councillor Garron.
Through Mayor, we have a flag raising policy. Do they all requests have to come back through council, or do they just need to meet the policy standards and then admin can just approve, or does it have to come back to us?
Morissette.
Through you, Mayor Bondi. Perfect. So the past history has been that we've always brought them back to council because there's usually a ceremony associated with it. It doesn't necessarily have to be. We do have delegation of authority through the policy to be able to bring those forward, which we do in the case of sometimes flag ceremonies might be very last minute. But if we can provide notice to council via the agenda, we have done that in the past.
I saw the thinking. Okay, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Committee meeting minutes. Looking to receive the committee meeting minutes listed in agenda item 14, together with any recommendations to council noted therein, to be received and approved and adopted as circulated. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor Hammond. Any questions to any of those committee meeting minutes? Seeing none. All in favor? And that is carried. Sorry, I lost my page. Hang on. Okay. Okay, notice is a motion. I just have to go to you anyways. We'll go to our Deputy Clerk, Shelley Brown.
The following notices of motion are for presentment only and will be brought forward for council's consideration at the September 18th, 2023 regular council meeting. Item 17.1.1, moved by Councillor Verbeek, that council direct administration to review the fill permit and the advantages and disadvantages to large-scale infill properties and to provide to council a report of their findings with recommendation. Item 17.1.2, as moved by Deputy Mayor Shepley, that council direct administration to seek pricing and present at the 2024 budget deliberations to have an urban forestry plan within the town of Essex urban centers. This plan is to evaluate existing inventory of town-owned trees, to provide maintenance recommendations on existing trees, including those that may be unsafe, and to provide strategic recommendations on locations where additional trees can be placed throughout the municipality.
Reports and announcements from council members. We'll start with Councillor Garron since we started over there the last. Councillor Hammond.
To you, Mayor. Just want to state that Rotary Club will be having another pop-up breakfast and lunch on the 9th in Harrow. Everyone's welcome to attend. Please do.
Madam Mayor, I just want to say congratulations to the Harrow Fair Board. They did a great job putting on the fair this weekend. It was fantastic. I spent quite a bit of time out there, and special note, I want to make mention of the pie auction. They raised $82,000, which was a record, and the first pie went to it was in recognition of Lonnie Katie, who was a big supporter of this, who passed away, and that pie alone went for $10,000, and the last pie went for $15,000. It was quite quite an event, and it was a nice tribute for my friend Lonnie that passed away. Thanks.
Sure, just reminding everybody that we've got school buses and littles back on the roads, and so asking you to just be really mindful. We gotta drive safer anyway, but especially now with the school buses on the road. And I also just want to point out that many of us, many in our community are still suffering the effects of the flooding. And so if you're one of the people that have been devastated by, my heart goes out to you because I know how challenging it can be. But if you were fortunate enough to not experience damage to your properties and your homes, can you just reach out, check on your neighbors that are, and you'll know them by the garbage piled up, all the things that were their belongings and parts of their home will be piled up on their front yard. So if you can lend a hand, please do.
McGuire Blaze.
Okay, thank you through the chair. I just want to remind everybody that the Essex Community Gardens are still hosting their farmers markets Monday nights at 276 Talbot Street South from 4 p.m. till 8 p.m. That's going to go up until and including September 28th. So there's a couple more weeks of a farmers market in Essex Center. So please go out and support all those vendors and the Essex Community Gardens. That way they can have another fruitful year next year.
Madam Mayor, I just want to echo Councillor Verbeek's sentiment there on helping your neighbor out during these times, that there's a lot of cleanup that's still ongoing, and our staff has been working overtime around the clock trying to get caught up and ahead of the game and answering all the questions and everything coming in. We hear you and we're going to be working with you. Thanks.
Bylaw 2266, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the August 14th regular council meeting be read a third time and finally passed September 5th. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Guerin, supported by Deputy Mayor Shepley. Any questions? Being none, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Bylaw 2258, being a bylaw to provide for the Campbell Side Road Drain, Roberts Footbridge, Geographic Township of Colchester North, in the town of Essex and the county of Essex. That bylaw 2258 be read a third time and finally passed today, September 5th. Needing a mover and a seconder. Councillor Mady, Councillor Allard. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. Bylaw 2255, being a bylaw to provide for the Alford Creek Drain, updated maintenance schedules and bridge cost sharing, be read a third and final time on today, September 5th. Needing a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Guerin. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. Bylaws require a first, second, and third final reading, being a bylaw to expropriate lands required for municipal purposes. That bylaw 2261 be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed on September 5th. Moved by Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor McGuire Blaze. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. And that is carried. And bylaws requiring a first and second reading, bylaw 2270 being a bylaw to repeal bylaw 1908 of the Corporation of the Town of Essex. To be read a first, second, and provisionally adopted today on September 5th. Needing a mover and a seconder. Councillor Verbeek, supported by Councillor Guerin, sorry. All in favor? And that is carried. Being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the September 5th regular council meeting of the Corporation of the Town of Essex. Bylaw 2269 be read a first, second time and provisionally adopted September 5th. Needing a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor McGuire Blaze, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. And we have lots of meetings coming up. Going to start to get busy again. Monday, September 18th is our next regular council meeting, and that one will be a doozy. Friday, September 22nd, we're having a tour of our facilities. And with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Counselor Hammond, Counselor Garren, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. Thank you for joining us tonight.